In this program, you are going to learn about nursing research and research process in detail. Knowledge and understanding of various aspects of nursing research and research process will enable you to take up some areas of nursing research in the hospital, community or educational setting wherever you are working as nursing personnel. We have today with us in the studio Dr. Aparna Bihari, who is Professor and Coordinator of Postgraduate Studies in College of Nursing in the Academy of Higher Education, Manipal, Mahe. We are proud to have you, Dr. Aparna Bihari, today to discuss about nursing research and research process in detail. Dr. Bihari, before we go into detail of various aspects of research process, would you like to elaborate what is research process?
Well, before we go into research process, maybe we begin with what is a process. A process is that what we do when we do something step by step. For example, you are familiar with the nursing process. In nursing process, you have learnt that we do an assessment first and then we go into diagnosis, and following that is planning and then implementation of the plan and evaluation.
Dr. Bihari, you have raised that there are 4 strategic points for any nursing research or research process. Now, what is this conceptualization of research problem? I mean, if you could clarify that, it will be explaining, how do we conceptualize the research problem?
I will explain it in terms of certain steps. These steps are perceived by different author in different ways. There is no one way of classifying these steps. But however, say in the beginning what we want to look into is the what is a research problem, and we need to define this research problem, state this research problem. This problem must be stated in a way that it shows that it is a reasonable one, it is something which is significant, something which is relevant for nursing, and something which is researchable. And after we have stated, maybe we define the purpose. Why do we want to do this research? Is it going to help us in improving the patient care? Is it going to help us in improving the teaching? Is it going to help us in improving the administration? So, we define the purposes, and following that we would like to define different terms used. Certain terms carry different meanings. Like for example, if I say that what is the perception of a person for say family planning, what is this perception? We have to define. Maybe I will define perception as the expressed opinion of the person is the perception. That means what the mother says about the family planning becomes the perception. So, different terms we will define, and then probably what we will go into it is state the hypothesis, state the assumptions of the research.
Now, what are these assumptions? Because many a times it is not clearly understood that how do we describe assumptions or define assumptions?
Assumptions are like the foundation on which you build the research. That means these are certain statements that are believed to be true. A very simple example is that you see every day the sun rises in the east. So, your assumption is that sun rises in the east. You send your children to school because your assumption is that the teaching improves knowledge of a person. So, these assumptions are basic facts or principles or theories on which you build your research.
In a research process, the researcher is going to base the hypothesis on the assumptions. That means she has to go through lot of material, review lot of literature. That means once she reviews the literature, it is enough, or she has to continue reviewing the literature?
Research literature review is a continuous process. In the beginning, the review of literature helps the researcher to find out what is researched, what is yet to be researched, what difficulties the other researchers have faced, and what are the tools the researchers have used, how have they analyzed, what are their findings. And in a later stage, that helps in developing a conceptual framework that finds the relationship between concepts from which she identifies the variables that she wants to study. At a later stage, again she develops her tool for data collection on the basis of the review of literature, and when she is writing up her interpretation and report, she takes the findings of the other researcher and sees and matches the similarities and the differences between her findings and the findings of the other researchers.
So, it does not stop in the beginning, it is a continuous process till the time she writes the report.
That's right.
Now, I want you to take you back on variables. You started off with variables because these are something important which a researcher is going to incorporate in her studies. Would you like to elaborate?
These variables are the characteristics, as I have said, the phenomena that the researcher intends to study. For example, you want to study is smoking related to cancer. Now, the smoking becomes the variable. Say pollution related to cancer, the pollution becomes the variable. The females get more cancer of the uterus, male gets more cancer of the colon. So, here in these cases the sex becomes the variable. So, the variables are these characteristics the researcher wants to study. Variable means something which varies, it can be quantified, it can be measured, that is more than one values can be given in this variable. Variable can be measured in terms of categories, like for example excellent, good, average, or it can be measured in terms of scores like 1, 2, 3, 4 continuous scores. The variables are classified as a dependent and independent variable. So, sometimes the independent variable is also called as the predictive variable or experimental variable. That means the variable which the researcher manipulates. She can select patients who are smoking and who are not smoking. That means she manipulates this variable, and then she sees what happens. Do they have cancer? And so, the cancer becomes the dependent variable. The researcher has no control over the occurrence of this cancer. It happens. Right. So, dependent variable.
The other important thing which I would like to explain to our students is about the population sampling, what are the various ways of sampling techniques and all that.
To begin with, we have to see who are the people who are having particular characteristics. Say you want to study about antenatal status of the women. So, that means your people who have these characteristics are women who are pregnant. Therefore, your the women who are pregnant and becomes the population. But in this it is a whole universe, there is a population. That means, this characteristic is present in a vast number of people, and this universe has got number of populations. You may have a population of those who are staying in Delhi, you may have population of Chawla village. So, you define the population of a particular place, which means on whom you want to generalize your data. Whatever study you do, you say my population has this characteristics. And we do not study population, it is very difficult because it is large, it is time consuming, it is costly, and if we select our population in a scientific way, we can study a smaller group which we call sample, a representative of the population, the findings of which can be generalized on the population.
What are the various sampling technique, Dr. Bihari?
Yes, the sampling technique basically can be classified into two, and one is the probability sample, one is non-probability sample. Now, for example, you take in a bowl chits of say 90 women who are residing in this particular Chawla village, that is your population. But you do not want to study all 90, you want to study only 30, and you shake the bowl and take out one by one 30 numbers, which is like a lottery. See, that becomes a random sample, and that is a probability sample, which means every individual had equal opportunity of being selected. Sometimes we take them out, we take one out and then we keep it away. So, what happens is that 90 becomes 89, we take out 2, then 89, from 89 we get it 88. So, in that case our probability mathematically reduces. If we put it back, each time it can become 1 in 90. So, we call it sample with replacement, sample without replacement. We can also do by seeing a random sample table. There are tables available from which we can do, and also other examples of probability sample are stratified sample, cluster sample, and the non-probability samples are those where it is a biased sample. That means every individual subject did not have the equal opportunity. Like examples are purposive sample, convenience sample. So, this is basically, but the main point is that from a non-probability sample you cannot generalize population, whereas from probability sample you can generalize population.
We also would like you to discuss what are the various methods of data collection, because in brief what are the various methods?
Basically there are 3 methods of data collection. One is questioning, that is we ask the subject questions and the subject answers, like opinion, facts, we can collect from that. We also can have observation, that is we see what is happening actually, and thirdly we can measure. So, questioning, observation and measurement. Measurement can be various ways of measurement. For example, it can be physical measurement, you can have length and weight, or it can be chemical measurement, you can find blood sugar, blood urea, or it can be social measurement, socio-economic data, or it can be psychological measurement, intelligence, aptitude. So, these are the 3 basic ways of collecting data. But what we have to remember while collecting the data to begin with is that what data are to be collected, right. Secondly, what we have to see is that where is this data, that means the setting. Am I going to collect it from patient's home or the clinic or the community? So, thirdly we have to see when to collect the data, that should be convenient for the subjects as well as for the researcher. Also it should be the time when that data is present, like you want to collect the body weight of the patient who are getting diuretics. The best time is to do it in the morning every day. Then we also have to see is that how we collect the data and who collects the data. Sometimes if you yourself may collect the data, sometimes you may have to train people to collect the data. So, these are some of the basic, we call it 5 W's,
Yes.
Why, when, what, where and how. Like for example, the very basic type of data is called nominal data. Nominal data are category data, they are exclusively classified under categories. Now, for example, if you say male and female, that is a nominal data, and with nominal data you can make a percentage or proportion, but you will not be able to make a combine and make a mean or median or standard deviation. Then we can have ordinal data. Ordinal and nominal are similar in nature in terms of its exclusiveness in classification, but ordinal data has got ranks and rates. That means you can rank them 1, 2, 3, 4. If you ask what is your choice, career choice, one can say what is my first choice, second choice, third choice, right. But you can't say the difference between first and second is equal to second and third, which if you have interval level data you can have. Interval data, we call it a continuous data, and that means the data can take any point in its measurement level, and you can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of its scoring, and you know the difference between 1 and 2 is same as the difference between 2 and 3 and same as the difference between 3 and 4. And the fourth and the highest level of data is called as the ratio level data, and the ratio level data is also a continuous data, and in addition it has a mathematical 0. The interval level and ratio level data, you can do many statistical calculation with it, and that is 3 levels of data. And when we do our hypothesis, we have to see what type of data we have to get.
Dr. Bihari, would you like to clarify a very important concept, that is research approaches, for our students, please?
Research approaches means research methods. That means what methods you are employing for the design of the research, and basically there are 3 broad methods. One is historical, then is survey, and experimental. Historical means the data are in the past, you have to go and collect that data, and the survey method means the data is present, you have to set a place where you want to collect the data, and whereas experimental means it is futuristic, that is you have to go around and create an environment in which you want the events to take place and collect the data. These are the 3 basic methods, and some researcher also classifies laboratory method and field method. Like in nursing, all studies are field method, whereas laboratory method studies are all those who are doing in pure science, those are laboratory method studies. I think these are basically 3 methods. One can distinguish these approaches in many other ways.
What I am more interested from you, Dr. Bihari, is to tell us that what is the significance of writing report after we analyze the data?
In the analysis of data, maybe we have to see what approach we have used, and what hypothesis we have had. Now, for example, if we have done a survey approach, in survey approach mainly you describe the data. You use descriptive statistics, and you present in graphs. You can see an example of a graph, we call this as a bar graph. Then you can present it in the form of a table in frequency or percentages. You can make you can compute measures of central tendencies like mean, media and mode. You can have compute the variabilities like standard deviation, variance. But if you are doing an experimental type of data, which experimental approach you take, then in that case you probably have hypothesis and you want to find the relationship. So, the relationship analysis will vary according what type of hypothesis, what type of data you have, and what method of what design you have used in your research. Say if you have said that those patients who receive a particular type of exercise will demonstrate an improved recovery. So, what you have to do is to have some patients where you give this exercise and have some patients whom you do not give the exercise, and then you will have to use inferential statistics and find out that is the performance of these 2 groups different or same, and in that case we use hypothesis.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bihari, for giving us an overview in such a short period, in such a detailed manner and very clear. I think students will be very pleased to view this video, because this program gives you a total concept about the research process in a very simple and clear manner. We are very thankful to you, Dr. Bihari, for having come all the way and doing the recording for us, for our students, and detailing out what is research process. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.